On that topic of taking the management of New Zealand information forward, many of you will know the government set up a working group to advise ministers on how the collection, sharing and use of business and personal information will impact on public services into the coming years. Now, the working group is tasked with looking ahead to help develop the technical, the legal frameworks that will be needed for us to continue to meet public expectations as that technology develops. Former Treasury Secretary and World Bank Executive Director John Whitehead is Chairman of the New Zealand Data Futures Forum. Sitting next to him, James Mansell is a Director of the Ministry at the Ministry of Social Development. He's also on the Data Futures Forum. So please welcome both gentlemen to the stage.
Kia ora koutou, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. Having been overseas for a few years, it's great to be back amongst some familiar faces, and particularly such important users of official statistics. Today, as Sue mentioned, I'm here as a representative of the New Zealand Data Futures Forum. As you'll appreciate, the future of data is a big topic, and in the time we've got, we can hardly scratch the surface. So today I'm simply going to touch on three things that I think will be most useful for you: how the forum came to be, who is the forum, and importantly, what the forum intends to do and how. The New Zealand Data Futures Forum has been established by the Ministers of Finance and Statistics to explore the future of data sharing within and between the public and private sectors. Sue mentioned the strong interests of ministers, and the ministers, I think, are particularly interested in how New Zealand can make better use of public and private data to support innovation, decision-making, to solve problems and to create benefits for individuals, communities, business, government, non-government organisations, New Zealand as a whole. And I think sharing and use of new types of data has big potential to support both private and public sector innovation. So the forum is intended as an initial step towards creating that environment where New Zealanders collaborate to share and use data for innovation and decision-making and maintain individual privacy and trust, as we've heard this morning. And obviously there's a lot of other people involved in that. We have a particular role to help push that forward. Fundamentally, I think ministers have set in place an exercise in open democracy. We need a good, much better informed debate, as Colin was saying earlier, on the issues that so-called big data throws up for this country. Let me oversimplify, perhaps only slightly, but at the moment I think we have a set of people whose eyes are firmly fixed on all the immense possibilities that technology, plus all the data we are collecting publicly and privately, formally and informally, what all of those things can offer us. And as you'll know, those possibilities are immense, whether it's in health, transport, business opportunities, scientific innovation, better public services, as Ian has been talking about, better places to live, work, learn and play, and of course in your everyday life. So we have that set of people on one side, and on the other side we have a set of people whose minds are very firmly fixed on the real dangers of privacy breaches, invasive, malicious and discriminatory use of data, digital exclusion and loss of control that this revolution could present us with. And of course, in the middle there's many that have never thought about these issues at all. So the real question is whether we can shift this bifocal approach. Can we be smart as a country and work out a data future that enables us to obtain the benefits of effective data use while minimising the risks and challenges? In other words, to what extent can we have our cake and eat it? It follows that one way or another, the forum itself should involve as many New Zealanders as possible. The core forum members themselves represent a range of academic, private and public sector expertise. We make no pretence of being representative of New Zealand as a whole, although we all live here and have real interest in the issues I've outlined. We certainly don't have all the answers, so part of our job is to stimulate that wider debate that Colin was talking about. I'd like to just take the opportunity, if I can, to to summarise the membership of the Data Future Forums group for you. Some of those members are here at this conference, and so it's important that we take an opportunity, if we can, to talk to them and engage them in the issues. Stephen England Hall up there is Chief Executive Officer of Loyalty New Zealand, think Flybys, and among other things, many other things, is a member of the Cambridge University Vice-Chancellor's Advisory Board on Communication. John Roberts is Director of Relationship Management at DIA, a key link between government agencies, and Colin as Government Chief Information Officer. And John obviously has huge experience in the data field. James Mansell is Director of Innovation and Strategy at MSD and is a key champion for the outcomes-focused use of advanced analytics and data sharing within government. Paul O'Connor is the founder of DataMine that has developed and owns world-leading data analysis programs, processes and products. Evelyn Wareham is Manager Integrated Data and Research at Statistics New Zealand and is responsible for leading the expansion of Statistics New Zealand's integrated data infrastructure. Joshua Feast is Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Cogito, which delivers analytical software that senses unconscious hues in human interactions to infer mood and behaviour. This work has won many awards and accolades from Harvard, MIT and many other bodies. Miriam Lips is Professor of E-Government at the Victoria University of Wellington School of Government, and she's held positions at Oxford and Tilburg universities. Interesting, Miriam has just released research on New Zealanders and New Zealand views on online identity issues, which has many interesting findings, and I'd really encourage you, if you haven't yet, to access that and read about it. One of those findings reveals that New Zealanders currently, on an international basis, have a high degree of trust in government in terms of its protection of online identity. So actually, despite the issues we've had, we start off in a reasonably good space. David Wales is the Manager, Analytics and Insights in the Treasury Performance Hub, working on system-level data analytics in multiple government agencies. And he has a forensic psychiatry background and has held senior positions in corrections. So those are the core members of the group. I'm there as chair, I think, selected because, certainly compared to everyone else on that group, I know absolutely very little about data and the issues involved, so I guess I'm the layperson to ask the dumb questions, but I'm sure there'll be others that will help on that too. So what is this data future thing all about? As Sue mentioned, we're lucky enough to have one of the members of the forum, James Mansell from MSD, here on stage, and I've asked him to give you a quick example of what might be possible by sharing more public sector data. And obviously, if we throw in private sector non-government data, the possibilities are wider still. James.
Yeah, look, apologies for those of you who were here 3 weeks ago and saw me do a similar presentation then. I suspect that's quite a few of you. But look, what I really want to do is just reiterate some of what Ian and Colin were saying by showing you an example of the value of shared government data and the way we're starting to try and use it. And you will have seen Marquis Smith before. I'll try and make it a little bit different this time. Look, why do we want to share data in government? There are obviously lots of sort of efficiency reasons. So the work that Colin's team's doing on RealMe and that kind of thing, where there's online authentication and the ability to manage your affairs more easily with government, is clearly of huge value. But I think there's a more fundamental reason why we need to start thinking about how we use shared data more widely across government. And it's really to do with the nature of government itself. If you think about what the state sector is, it's really a large decision-making engine for where we should target our coercive powers and where we should target our services. If we didn't sort of all as citizens confer that power on government to do that, it would be kind of anarchy, wouldn't it? And so part of our job is as a large decision-making engine about where to target services. Of course, then we deliver services. And most of the reforms in the 1980s and our performance management and our focus in the last 20, 30 years has been on becoming more efficient because, and one way to do that is to be very services focused. So most of the state sector is organised around these silos of professions and services. In child, youth and family, we have child protection and youth justice, and then we've got health sectors divided into primary care and tertiary care, and most line management, accountability and budgets and data sits within these silos. And that's great, actually, for most people with sort of what I call linear kind of problems, where the problem is really, it may be high needs like cancer or something, but we well understand what we need to do, and what we need to do is be good and efficient at making sure that people get that service. However, that misses another kind of problem which the state sector grapples with, and that's the problem of how we focus on people for whom that doesn't work. And I'll give you an example here, Marky Smith. I mean, this is the view from within youth justice of this kid. Been referred by the police, had a couple of family group conferences, and ends up in a youth justice residence. And mostly the performance measures in youth justice are YJ activity drivers, so how fast we're managing things, how many services we're providing, and how secure we keep the kids and all that sort of thing. But really, to truly be customer focused, you actually need to understand pathways across the state sector. It's only when you can start to understand the full picture of some pathways that it becomes clear that the state sector doesn't work very well for some people. For example, this person had behavioural difficulties at 3, findings of physical and sexual abuse, through their early growing up period. Clearly went on to youth offending, did quite well at school with NCA level 2 results, even tried some tertiary training, but has gone on to benefit and into prison. We've spent $213,000 on that person so far. Not much of it up front. We're going to spend a hell of a lot more up this end. So I think when you think about the value of using shared data across the state sector, we need to be thinking about how well we make decisions, how well we measure outcomes, and how well we make people account for stuff which we're not currently accountable for. So the person in child, youth and family who first saw this person at 3 wasn't accountable for their offending at 30 or 20. The person in youth justice is accountable for their particular part of a service, but not really accountable for how well they're doing at school or their longer term outcomes. We can't do that kind of work unless we have shared data. We can't focus on outcomes unless we have shared data. Most outcomes happen to people after they've received a service. And so if you're only looking at your own data, you're really not that interested in longer term outcomes. So I think shared data is going to lead to a step change in performance, because if you think about what we've been trying to do in the last 20, 30 years to become more efficient, we probably are quite efficient. I suspect Ian knows some statistics on how well we're doing compared with other public sectors. But efficiency is not the whole game. It's better targeting is actually needed as well. We need the instruments to allow us to invest confidently early to get a better long-term outcome. We need to be able to trace those outcomes across a wide variety of outcomes, so that we're measuring the return on our investment in an early service across health, justice and education, and a lot of your servicing silos. As Colin said, we need to be good stewards of this data. So it's a challenge, isn't it? I don't want to give this picture to the front line, every Tom, Dick and Harry, for every decision that's ever made. So how do we do that? Well, we've got some really challenging issues to deal with, to figure out how we can use this well and sensitively, so that we can achieve good outcomes and be accountable for good outcomes, and stop trickle spending, which is what I call this kind of pathway. In case you think this isn't very common, we're starting to find that it's very common. There are thousands of people with a very similar profile costing the state sector many billions of dollars. This is not a unique kind of case. It's actually quite common, depressingly so. So we need to do something about it. Yes, and so I guess the work of the Data Futures Forum will be thinking about these kinds of issues and how you balance the need to get benefits from shared data with the need to manage it well. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I think that really emphasises, the significance in this case of outcome and individual-focused work. as opposed to necessarily just focusing on production silos. So in summary, the Data Future Forum is about future possibilities. It's being set up to explore how data, both public and private, can be safely harnessed, shared and put to use to improve the lives and help business and communities prosper. The forum's exploring how data sharing can stimulate innovation as well as promote privacy and security. So those two things together. And we think the status quo does neither of these well. So we do this by exploring this exploration by engaging with and seeking input from critical stakeholders such as yourselves and with wider sectors of interest, including Māori business, WGOs, NGOs, research and science sectors, etc. Next week, we'll be releasing the first of our discussion documents. There'll be, we hope, 3 in all. These are designed to spark debate, and so I encourage you to really get involved in that discussion. And on the screen is some key contact information for you. You'll find the discussion document on the website around the middle of next week. This website is being launched today. So it's one way that we can connect with you. There'll be other ways which the discussion document will explain. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.